My name's Mike Ward, and I started a supplements company focusing on high-quality organic herbal supplements and vitamins. One of the things that surprised me when I first started talking to Brian is that I was not necessarily rock solid on selling the business. So in speaking to him, I wanted to determine the validity of the business, the value of the business, is the climate right? So I wanted to get a sense of the landscape there. And I was kind of anticipating a bit of a hard sell, not unlike kind of a real estate experience. An agent will say, yeah, sell now. It's always a good time to sell. He was not in any way pushy. He stood to make a tremendous amount of commission off the sale of the business. And by the way, worth every cent of it. I was surprised at how much he was educating me just in the landscape and not in any way pushing towards having me as a client. I loved that. I wanted absolute patience. Really, that was the biggest thing, is I wanted to be able to say, I don't know the answer to a question, and repeatedly say that in my case, and have very long, patient answers. And most importantly, never feel pressured to sell it, for a certain price, never feel pressured to sell it to a certain buyer. I always was made to feel that I was in control. I was being highly informed, but all the decisions were ultimately mine to decide. And for me, that was critical. I ended up really loving the process, actually, of selling the business. At first, I was overwhelmed, and I let him know that. I had no pride or ego going into this. I completely threw myself at his feet, and I said, look, I need you to really help me throughout this. And he did. It was the little things, frankly. It was the texting him at 11 at night, and I got a response on weekends. I mean, I really felt, I went to joke with him, but I think he's essentially a psychologist, first and foremost. I mean, he's, for a lot of guys and girls like me that are selling a business, there's a lot of money at stake. We've built something that we care tremendously about, and we're selling our baby. And I openly say to him, I said, he handled me very well. So I would say, there's a lot of minutiae involved in it. It's a long process. It's a lot of phone calls. It's a lot of phone calls first with him and I. So it was, I would say the first phase was determining the valuation of the business, how to package the business to potential buyers. The second was getting all the paperwork, all the books and everything in order. He was extremely helpful in that regard. The second phase was talking to potential buyers on calls. I've never had those phone calls before. He was on all of those Zoom calls. He would dive in when he felt that maybe I didn't have an answer, or my answer wasn't maybe the right answer, or it wasn't necessarily, demonstrating the business in the way that it should have been demonstrated. He was just, I knew that he was always on the call. He would let me talk when I needed to talk, but he would jump in if he felt there was something I was missing. And then as we kind of found, we found a buyer that we wanted to work with, then we started to get into kind of the due diligence process, which again was extremely new for me. Very detail orientated, which is where Brian shines. I was surprised at the strength of his financial knowledge and that he has that background. So I essentially got a tremendously trained accountant as well. And then, you start the exit, you start handing off goods, you start paperwork, then lawyers get involved. He recommended a lawyer to me as well, who I loved as well. I mean, it was turnkey. I didn't expect it to be turnkey, but that's probably the word I would use. The whole thing was very turnkey. I would absolutely recommend Brian to other business owners. In fact, I would encourage other people to get into e-commerce just so that they have the ability to work with Brian. He is truly, he's an accountant, he's an agent, he's a psychologist, he's your best friend when you're freaking out. I mean, I would highly recommend it. It absolutely exceeded my expectations on every metric. It was trust, working relationship, and working with somebody who's extremely knowledgeable for me. Brian and Website Closes ticked all those boxes. I couldn't have found a better agent, couldn't have found me a better buyer. So, and I did a lot of research. Do your research, but I mean, I couldn't give him a higher recommendation. I really couldn't.